Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Agents of MACE. Today we're continuing our chronological watch through of the X-Men live action universe. Um, so we'll kind of, we've been doing this new thing where we're like keeping you up to date with what happened last time. So we'll jump back in time to our last X-Men movie, which was X3 The Last Stand, where we see a version of the Dark Phoenix storyline play out, along with a mutant who has the ability to erase mutant abilities, and the Brotherhood of Mutants sort of finally coming together as like a large numbered army as opposed to the Brotherhood of Mutants that we've gotten in the previous two, which were more like, your classic. It's Magneto and Toad and Sabretooth and Mystique, and that's kind of it. This time we get to see, or last time, I guess, we get to see like a whole bunch of other people. Um, that movie ends. Wolverine kills Jean Grey to stop the Phoenix Force, and sort of, kind of, that leads us to the Wolverine. It is directly after, but also time has passed. So that's where we are for the Wolverine. So buckle your X suit on, put away your adamantium claws, and let's dive into it. I'm Drew.
I'm Luke.
I'm Elisa.
And we are the Agents of MACE. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are here. We are in the X universe again with the Wolverine, which for a very long time was like my favorite, probably, of the live action X-Men series. I feel like they went a new direction with this one, where all the other ones were a little campy, a little funny with some action. This one was a little darker, a little more serious, and definitely more adult than I feel like the other ones were.
There's an F-bomb in this.
Yeah, and there's also lots of blood and lots
No,
of
no black leather.
yeah, no black leather, but
There
no
are
yellow
very
leather.
few. There's very few shirts to be had in this movie.
It's true, yes.
Right.
Yes, this movie could, probably stand up against Magic Mike if it needed to. Um, I feel like the overall tone of this movie was a lot darker, especially with the MCU having started by this point, and those movies coming out. Those movies had a little bit more serious tone, but also they did the Marvel thing where it was like lots of jokes peppered in to kind of lighten the overall tone of the movie, even when there's like serious stuff going on. This movie, sure, it has some jokes peppered in there. Sure, it has some funny moments tossed around, but still, it doesn't seem like enough to tone this movie up, I guess, because it is definitely a darker film. So I guess we'll do like first thoughts for the movie as a whole.
Yeah, we could jump into that. This is one I always remember enjoying. I guess now the question is, so this came out in 2013. Does it hold up today? For the most part, I'd say it does. I think there's a couple of things in there, maybe not so much. And then I think there's one thing in particular, we'll get to it probably. I guess we can talk about at the end. That's a little frustrating to me. Just in, but maybe they'll revive it coming up, in the world that we're in. But all in all, and also like I wanted to kind of go through like James Mangold. He's the director of this, and just looking at like where he was during this time. I mean, he had a lot of strong movies leading up to this, and I'm just looking at his resume, and it's like all over the place, because I think where he really probably got into the scene was with Girl Interrupted, and then after that was Kate and Leopold, And then I totally forgot that he directed Identity, which if you've never seen that, solid like thriller whodunit
Hmm.
type movie. Really enjoyed that one. And then he came off of that with Walk the Line.
And
And
hold it,
then
Kate and Leopold had Hugh Jackman and
yeah,
Sabretooth in it.
uh-huh.
That's
So
right. It did have Sabretooth.
yeah, it works with a lot of the same actors, it seems. But then you get in, yeah, like he did the Wolverine, then he did Logan, then
He
he
did
like came
310 to
back and
Yuma too, right?
did 310 to Yuma, came back in 2019 with Ford v Ferrari, which is really solid. I think
Mm.
the one latest of question would be Dial of Destiny, I think from a directorial standpoint, it's fine.
We are starting to, like, my wife and I just started like a full watch through of all of the Indiana Jones movies,
Nice.
and I know that we're gonna watch that one, and
Yeah.
I'm honestly looking forward to it. I
Yeah.
liked it. I think it will, for it going into it with low expectations, it was
Yeah.
way better than I thought it was gonna be.
I was pretty neutral about it. It's a fun watch, not one I would jump to for all of the indie movies,
Oh yeah, yeah, of course.
But I don't know if I know my kids have watched Indiana Jones. I don't know if they've seen this one, but I'd revisit with them for sure. But I'm definitely excited to see his take on Star Wars. He's right now he's set to direct Star Wars Dawn of the Jedi, so excited about that. But you know, I think solid director. He did Wolverine Logan. I really like what he did with Logan. But with Wolverine, I think it was a good, like he built that world, more of that world of the Wolverine,
Hmm.
which I think what I really enjoyed about this one is we're not just at the school, right? We're not with the normal mutants that we're used to. Like
Hmm.
we're kind of dive back into Logan himself and kind of what he's going through, which I like that they touch on. They did bring in Jean, like, a lot of this is taking with the events after the last stand. So I thought that was really fascinating as well. And that was a moment that was something I completely forgot they did with the Wolverine.
Hmm.
But I think those little adds to this movie really kind of made it an enjoyable watch.
Hmm. How about you, Elisa?
Well, like you guys have been saying, this is a well done movie. This is well crafted. It does have a more serious and somber tone. And it comes after we had watched some that were like not good. uh, X3 was not good. And of course it's so much better than X-Men Origins. So much better. But at the same time, I did find myself missing a little bit of the levity from some of the other movies. And we haven't even, or you guys have both seen Logan. I have not seen Logan yet. I'm looking forward to it because I understand that it's supposed to be really good. And I can't imagine that Logan is the same level of seriousness as this. It looks like it is much more serious and dark tonally than this one is. Um, so yeah, I did enjoy watching this, but I did kind of miss the more fun superhero elements. And there were parts of it that kind of irked me. I know, sorry, Luke, I know you're just talking about how you enjoyed that they incorporated Jean. I did not. And we can get into that whenever we get to it. But yeah, I mean, well, after listening to that list, I think my favorite Mangold movie is Kate and Leopold. It's a really good one.
We can
Fair,
kind of pretend
fair.
that that may be set in the past of these two characters' lives.
We don't know that it's not.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, to get into the movie, we start with Wolverine having like a flashback to the end of World War II when he was a prisoner of war on like a little, I guess, inlet on the other side of Nagasaki. Um, and we see like a whole scene where the bombs get dropped and the like group that was holding all of these American prisoners here are, some of them run away, some of them stay and commit ritual suicide, and then one of them who's like can't quite do it, he is the one that's also like trying to free the prisoners to let the prisoners run away. And so then he runs over to help Wolverine who's in this like pit basically. And Wolverine comes up, realizes this guy, he's not gonna kill himself, but I don't want him to get blown up by the bomb, so he grabs him, tosses him in the hole, covers him up. And at the time, very clearly this means something, but at the beginning of the movie, we don't know what it means. We don't know who this person is. Wolverine then wakes up in the woods where he's living. He's had this, I guess, like dream memory. This is where some like questions start to pop up, which is like his whole thing is that he can't remember his past. So how does he remember this part of his past? Like it doesn't 100% line up with making sense as far as like Wolverine's character is supposed to go. It definitely seems like it's just a plot device to get him to go to Japan and be in a different place and have this storyline that like semi mirrors things that happen in the comics. But it's interesting that this whole time, like his whole shtick is that he can't remember anything before like the Weapon X program. So the fact that he immediately remembers this thing that happened like a long time ago is interesting and never explained why he can remember this part of his history. So strange, but okay. He has like this weird scene with his bear where like he and this bear clearly have some sort of respect between the two of them. They're both like marking trees on the other side of this forest. He goes into town. He sees some sketchy hunters. You kind of like, he's looking rough, right? He's got like long hair, like a scraggly beard. Not, not doing great.
Yeah, wish they could have dived a little bit more into why he chose to go there, maybe. Like what, like more instead of like the setup, a little bit more into like events that led him to where he was there. Which I don't want to, I want to kind of jump back a little bit before we get too far ahead.
Sure.
Like the whole opening sequence, like just the attention to detail on a lot of little things I thought was really cool. Like, Logan's trapped down in this well. He could get out at any time. I mean, the first time we see him, he's basically clawed his way up, using his claws to sit up there and actually like look to see what's going on. Because like if he sees anyone walking his way, he'll just jump back down, like not a big deal.
Right.
So but, like those little things are just like super cool. And I will say like the visual effects during the whole like nuclear explosion, I thought were very well done. Just that moment where, and I like the attention to detail with like their culture, right? Like these soldiers are choosing like to die like by them, like I can't remember the right terminology. Essentially, just dying with honor, right? Like instead of like this nuke taking me out.
Seppuku, I believe.
Yeah, I think something like that. Yeah, where we have the one soldier that's just there to do that, but then panics, and Logan chooses to save him, which I mean, with what he's been through at that point, like it shows the character that Logan is. Like he could have been like, he could have just stayed down there, right? But chooses not to. And I like the visual effects of like his whole body, like basically burnt to a crisp, and then watching as it heals like rapidly fast. That was
except for his pants
cool.
that don't seem to be affected at all.
I mean, but that goes into like the Hulk as well, right? You would like there's like it's a superhero
I get that
world,
you can't
right?
have his pants fall off, but
yeah.
So a funny thing, my wife and I have been talking about planning a trip to Japan, and I'm in charge of like planning where we go and what we're looking at and stuff. And I had already kind of laid out, a basic outline of a trip. And then I started this movie and immediately was like, well, I need to look and see like I recognize that Wolverine is not a historical figure, but I wonder if like that area exists in real life. and that I could go and take a photo over there and be like, this is the place for Wolverine.
I'm gonna
So
vote that you do that.
yeah, that's I need to look it up and see like what that area actually looks like.
But all that little detail, like just from the culture to like, Wolverine himself of like what he's capable of doing and just that he can just keep, it's like are they aware of mutants even at that point? Do they even know like, just what was going on during that time, like in place? Like would have been more fun to get some insight on, but I think it does enough for the setup. Yeah.
Definitely.
But yeah, these moments that we're leading into kind of reminds me a little bit of like Man of Steel, like when, he's just out there like trying to find himself and
Yeah.
kind of deals with the bar brawlers or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, he's just sort of like living his life in the woods, doing his thing. It's weird that he wouldn't just get a place to stay in town, but instead he like lives
Or
under a
build a
rock.
place.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
You,
just I get that he's like going through some emotional trauma of killing Jean, but like reverting to just laying on the ground underneath a rock doesn't seem like the way to go about that. Also, like surely he stinks, right? Like I don't know how that
oh,
works with Wolverine. If he like constantly is regenerating, like does he sweat? Does his body release odor? Maybe not. Maybe that's just like he doesn't get dirty because his skin constantly is cleaning itself. I don't know. But I would imagine that he stinks. He looks like he stinks. Nobody seems to care though when he goes to town. Um
you think instantly they're like, nope, you got to leave. I'm like,
yeah, yeah. In the night he's awoken by a bunch of yelling. He goes down, there's like a hunting camp that's been destroyed. Then he finds the bear. The bear's been poisoned but isn't dead, so then he has to you know put the bear out of its misery. Then is probably one of my favorite like Wolverine moments in the whole movie when he goes to the bar and confronts these guys, and immediately the tone for the movie is set. Like he like stabs one of them with the arrow with the poison and has this whole thing about like the guy's like it's not poisoned and he's like oh yeah, and he stabs him and it's like oh he's got you now, like you know that's poison. um at this point, Yuriko comes in. She kind of puts an end to this bar brawl by using her sword to cut a bunch of stuff in like very anime fashion. Um, it's interesting because this movie introduces Yuriko as a mutant. Like she has a power, but in the comics she does not. In the comics she is just a like ninja assassin, but she doesn't have this like ability to see people's deaths
That's also
or the
kind of
future.
barely a power.
Yeah, true. Especially because like I know there's lots going around uh her vision of how Wolverine dies and like how that ties into him dying in Logan, and like is that what she said? And it's like, well, I mean, I guess like you could loosely interpret anything, right? Because she's basically just like you're gonna die on your back with your heart in your hand, and it's like, well, that could mean like anything.
Yeah.
What a vague way to explain that.
So getting into all of that makes me curious if like how much that could extend into anything new coming into play. Now, I guess we can talk about it now because like yeah, I forgot all about this. So I was very curious if we would see this character come up again, and then forgot that they did bring this character back in Deadpool 2. It's just a little bit different.
Yep, she's different
Yeah.
actress. Seems to have a power that may or may not be different.
Yeah.
but also is sort of just a cameo
Right.
character in the Deadpool movies.
Yeah. So could either one of these versions appear in Deadpool and Wolverine?
So based on the trailers, we know the Deadpool version shows up.
It'd probably be more like
Is,
it
is
would be.
she's
I'd have
because
to go back
she's
and watch
in
the
the
trailer.
she's in the scene
she in-
where like everyone is saying happy birthday.
Okay.
So
Well, then there
she's
we
in the
go.
movie, but there is
Interesting.
also a rumor that this version of Yuriko may also appear in the movie, which would make sense to me because I am picturing this particular Wolverine is the Wolverine that we're going to get in Deadpool 3. Logan is a different universe Wolverine.
Got it.
Because it would not make sense for this Wolverine to end as
Yeah.
Logan, especially if this Wolverine is also supposed to be the one that is in Days of Future Past. So we're
Right.
already like mixing who is this
Universes,
Wolverine? What
time-
universe
yeah.
is he actually in? So I think that this one makes the most sense to lead to the Deadpool one because, you know, from based on the trailers for that, it looks like that's not in Deadpool's universe. That looks like he goes to the TVA and they send him to a different timeline, and that's where he meets this Wolverine. So,
Man.
oh, it's a confusing web.
How do we pronounce? Is it Yuriko or is it Yukio?
I wrote down Yukio.
Oh, Yukio. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's Yukio. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that there's potential for us to get both.
Okay. Yeah, because they seem to have a pretty tight relationship through the whole movie, and this is one of those things I was like, why have we not seen this character come back in anything else? Like, I feel like this could be a good character to bring in. It's really just kind of the bridge to Logan of like how big his world is, right? Like this would have been a cool way of like bringing this version of Logan to Madripoor or something like.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, which, you know, is interesting that Madripoor is never brought up in this.
Yeah.
But I guess that's fine.
It's almost like with the Wolverine, could the post credit could have hinted towards like Patch or something like that. Yeah.
Well, Yukio is sort of like our saving grace for comedy in this movie. I feel like she has the most like funny moments with Wolverine. The first one that we get, I mean, we get a few with like when she meets him and they're in the car. But the first one that like makes you almost laugh out loud is when they're on the plane and he's freaking out and she's like, "Don't worry, not this plane." And it's like, well, she's already explained that she can see your death, and she said, "Not this plane," which makes you think like, oh, is there another plane that he should be worried about getting on? So
Yeah.
that's, you know, it seems to be a running gag in the movie. A running gag, I guess. I mean by it happens at the beginning and it happens in a extended scene at the very end, which we'll talk about when we get there. But they do the metal detector gag again, which like I feel like are they obligated to do that in every Wolverine movie? I feel like every single movie he walks through a metal detector and it goes off. And it's like, yeah, we got it. You don't have to remind us.
Yeah.
We know that he has metal grafted to his bone.
It's I wonder if it's one of those things like we've done it so many times, let's just keep doing it.
Yeah, or like every time they get a new director, they're like, "Hey, it would be really funny if you walked through a metal detector." And people would be like, did you watch the other movies? You know
So
they've
we'll
done
do
that?
we'll do a mid episode question for our listeners. Do you think there will be an airport scene in Deadpool and Wolverine? Yes or no?
100%. 100% he's gonna walk through a metal detector. There's no way Ryan Reynolds is not making that gag.
All right.
When he gets there, we meet one of probably in my top 5 actors. Shingen, who is the son of Yamada, or Yoshida, sorry. He is played by Hiroyuki. I'm going to say it wrong.
Sonata.
Yeah,
Son-
Sonata.
One of my favorite actors.
Oh my gosh,
Like,
he's so good. He's in
so
so many
good.
things, and everything
Yeah.
that he's in is good.
Oh yeah.
But immediately, because I just watched Hawkeye, not in the grand scheme of things, not too long ago again. Is this the same character that Ronan kills in the MCU universe? I guess just MCU.
Right.
Because same actor,
Yeah.
he's in Tokyo when they're fighting. I guess it's possible that unfortunately this character won't appear in the MCU because he is already dead. Not that that doesn't mean that they'll just, get this actor to play somebody else, but that's all I could think every time he was on screen. Was like, he'll never be in the MCU because they already killed him. They can't bring him back now. There's like a funny scene where they mention that he's dirty, right? And this is why I posed that question earlier, because they mention that he's dirty and they give him a bath. But again, it seems like no one has cared until this point. He's been in an airport. He's been on a plane. He's been around a bunch of people. No one has cared that he's grungy, living in the woods until he finally gets here. And they're like, we're going to give you a bath. My follow-up question is, when he gets burned at the beginning of the movie, his classic hairstyle and his mutton chops grow back. When they find him, he has a full beard and like crazy scraggly long hair. They cut his hair and shave his beard. It doesn't grow back. Wouldn't it just go to whatever length it was at? How does that work? Does he have like a set that like you can always reset, but it will always come back to your classic little like pointed ends and your mutton chops and your stubble on your face? No matter what you do, that's your baseline.
I don't know if he can control that or anything, but
yeah, like what if he's like, you know what, I want to have a mohawk?
Yeah.
Could he just not do it? Or he'd have to like constantly be like shaving his head because it would keep growing back? It's confusing. It doesn't, the hair and the pants don't make sense. Everything else though, I mean, his shirt is off for most of the movie. So
that's probably why nobody ever said anything about how he smells. They're just like, Dad, go. Look at that dude.
We're introduced to a couple new characters, including Viper, who is just a creep this whole movie. She is so cringy, weird, like borderline assault all the time.
Is it borderline?
No, it is assault. Yeah, you're right. But just like, why is she so creepy? She doesn't have to be so creepy just because she's evil.
It's kind of a psychopath.
Yeah. They also don't really explain how her poison works because somehow it's able to affect Logan for an extended period of time. I don't know how that works. Like, that's part of his thing, right? Is that he's relatively immune to poisons because his body can like metabolize them pretty quickly. The only one that causes him problems the longer it's there is the adamantium, but that makes sense because he can't take it out. It's just stuck in him. But her poison seems like it would, like go in there, make a pretty quick round, and then be done. So it's interesting that he's able to, or it is able to affect him for the time that it does affect him. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if it was so much that versus the little spider thing they made.
Yeah, but it was like long enough for them to put that in him without him knowing. Unless we're supposed to think that like it was in the tea and he drank it and didn't notice that he swallowed like a spider bot. I don't know. Because I was trying to
Yeah,
think that too. I was like, how did they get it in him? They never really explained that. It's just like we saw them
and
and then it's in him.
doesn't Wolverine have like the heightened sense of smell? Like, can't he just like
Mm-hmm.
detect that kind of stuff?
You think.
You would, yeah. So like, I don't know if he could have sensed the poison that way or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, those little things are a little weird. Yeah, that whole moment, I had to circle back and scratch my head. I was like, how did all this happen? Because it just didn't really line up. Like,
Yeah. It seemed like another case of like, here's the thing, and we need it to
mhm.
be inside him, but we don't know how it's gonna get there, so it's just there. And don't worry about how it got there. But in this house is where he learns that Yoshida is the guy that he saved in World
Mhm.
War II, and Yoshida is dying now and is sort of proposing that he take Wolverine's ability to heal from Wolverine, letting Logan die. And, you know, you would assume Yoshida would take it for himself.
Mhm.
I have this written down in my notes twice. Once to talk about now and once to talk about later. But what's the science here? I get that this
Yeah,
is a comic book and I get that science is made up, but they don't even bother explaining how this guy has the ability to
yeah.
draw the mutant ability out of one person and then somehow inject it into himself. It makes
Yeah.
zero sense.
You'd think there would be a demo, right? Like you think they would have taken Logan into a room where you have a mutant and maybe a non-mutant, and they show you like this is what they're gonna do,
Or even
and
even
then
explain that Yoshida has like 5 or 6 other mutant abilities to kind of show that like, oh, he has experimented with
he's
this,
yeah
but
done
he
it enough
hasn't.
to keep him
Yeah,
going. Yeah.
but he hasn't found the one that will
Hmm.
actually save him. Instead, he has these like lesser versions of healing abilities or something.
Yeah.
That would have made it.
Taking a DNA sample from Logan, make it to where he no longer has that ability. Like, unless they exchange all of their DNA or
Right.
their entire bodies, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Right. Like, yeah, if Logan's body is constantly regenerating itself, if Yoshida was able to take DNA from Logan, wouldn't it constantly be regenerating within Logan anyway? So then they would
Hmm.
potentially both have this ability,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
maybe,
And then
instead of it being like explained that he can take it completely away from Logan.
what would they do about all the adamantium in his body? Like, what would that do if he switched to be mortal? Like,
I assume he would just like collapse in a heap
he
because that
would.
stuff weighs so much.
And like, speaking of that, it seemed to me like they wanted to focus more on the fact that like he has acquired the bulk of the adamantium. Like, he's,
Hmm.
but then they don't never really share per se, like, or at least then, like why or what he's doing with
Hmm.
it
Yeah, or like how he is acquired it.
or how he even got it. Like,
Yeah.
what's
Like,
his what's his business? What's his empire? Like,
yeah.
how did he go from soldier and then have all this money?
Yeah. And like, where is it going to? Like,
Yeah.
surely these would be questions that you would ask
Yeah. I mean,
offhandedly if you came from an organization like Weapon X, where you're like, oh, they're using this for bad things. Oh,
mhm,
what, you have it all now? What are you doing with it?
mhm,
Um, from here we get to go to another kind of cool scene. Um, it's the first glimpse at a silver samurai that we get.
mhm,
But they go to a funeral. I think it's a funeral, right?
Because what's
Um,
mhm.
his name is dead.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and first thing, we finally get to see Harada. He's in this entire movie, he is just a bodyguard. In the comic
Mhm,
books, he is the Silver Samurai.
Mhm.
So this is one of those moments where, like, if you're a comic book fan and you're watching this, you're like, oh, cool. Like, they introduced him. He's going to get the Silver Samurai armor at some point. Don't get your hopes up if you've never seen this movie. He is just a bodyguard throughout the entirety of this movie. But there's like a cool scene where Wolverine, using his air quote heightened senses, notices that one of the monks here has arm tattoos, and surprise, it's a Yakuza attack. And boy, oh boy, he takes like a full shotgun blast from like an inch away, which normally not that big a deal for Wolverine. But now, since he has been both poisoned and, yet to know it, has this robot that is like gripping his heart, which somehow affects his ability to heal. The shot is a little more damaging than normal. And this leads to this crazy scene where they are being chased all through like the streets of Tokyo, and they're on the bullet train on top of it, and it's a wild scene. So wild, in fact, that I looked it up. I was like, how do they shoot this? Fun fact, they did not shoot this on a set. This was a street in Tokyo, and they shot it in a like a guerrilla filmmaking style where they put all the actors in a van, like an unmarked van, and would drive it around until they found a street that they thought looked good. And the actors would hop out of the van and just start chasing each other down the street. So most of the people that you see like walking along the street, their reactions are real, because those are just normal people that did not know that a movie was being shot. So
that's cool.
It's a fun little thing. The like whole point of this scene, right, is that he and Yukio are trying to protect Yoshida's daughter and get her away from this attack. So the whole time they're trying to protect her, it leads to, Wolverine killing people left and right. He does the crazy thing where they fight on top of the train, and he does all kinds of like, does that funny move where he like pretends like he's going to jump and tricks the other guy into jumping, and the other guy gets like smacked away by a sign. This is sort of mirrored Into the Spider-Verse when Miles and 2099 Spider-Man are fighting on top of the train. There's like a little bit of that feeling of like climbing up this speeding train with your claws. I feel like Wolverine's claws vary in sharpness. Like sometimes they're really sharp, and other times they're just sharp enough for what they need to do, or maybe just dull enough for what they need to do. Like I feel like his would be like the whole point of adamantium, right? You don't have to sharpen it. It's always as sharp as it is when you adhered it or whatever. So when he uses it to like stab into the top of the train and is like sliding backwards to the train, and it's like cutting so easily through the roof of this train, you would think that he would just keep going and just like
it would
tear.
never stop.
Yeah, he would just tear this huge line on the top of this train.
Or it's like, why not? If he could brace his body up, like use his other hand and just cut a hole so he can get back into the train.
Yeah. I also want to know, what's that guy's knife made out of?
Right.
I would like to see a Mythbusters episode on whether or not you can stab a normal knife through the roof of a train. I feel like you can't.
Specifically a bullet. Like
Yeah. I have a feeling that you cannot do that. So interesting that guy was so strong that he could stab his knife through the top of the train. But it's a fun scene. There's lots going on. From here, we kind of get like Detective Logan. They're like trying to figure out like who put them up to that, what's going on. They like threaten that one guy. They're gonna throw him out the window. Then he does throw him out the window, but he lands in a pool. And here's another one of the like five jokes in the movie.
How did you know there would be a pool?
I didn't. I don't know if any of you watch James Bond movies, but this is very reminiscent of a James Bond movie, one of the Sean Connery ones, I think, where a guy throws a lady out of a like 10th story window and she lands in a pool, and James Bond is like, "Oh, good aim," and the guy goes, "I didn't know there was a pool down there." So
Sounds like it would still kill you.
yeah, I mean, yeah, 100%.
Oh yeah, the guy, like, pretty sure we can hear him and see him moving. So like
Yeah,
how did that happen? No,
he
no way,
survived.
no way.
Um, we see another flashback to this movie has a lot of Logan seeing Jean falling asleep,
Mhm.
seeing Jean in his dream, having weird flashbacks. Um, a cool little thing is the second time he has a flashback of him and Yoshida in the pit after the bomb detonated. Yoshida like offers him his sword, and
Mhm.
on his sword are kanji. And if you read the kanji and translate it, it translates to, I wrote it down, never died, never aged, never destroyed. So
Mm.
sort of a reference to Wolverine.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe some sort of like, ooh, what does that mean moving forward? Because Wolverine's like, I don't want to take the sword, and he's like, no, no, take the sword. Um, this is something that we'll talk about again in Logan, but in Logan, the sword is in his room, so sort of a tie to this, but
Mm.
also again, I theorized that the Logan Wolverine is not this Wolverine, so
Yeah. Got
uh, a weird
yeah, would
nod,
have
but
gotten the sword a different way.
yeah.
Or maybe he did battle Silver Samurai and got the sword that way or something.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I guess. Yeah,
There's
he could
also
have
like a
still done that.
cheeky like foreshadowing
Hmm.
with the sword. He kind of tells them like how he should hold it. Like,
Hmm.
samurai hold it this way. Like you hold it this way.
Yeah. So little foreshadowing, and another weird Gene scene. Uh I don't like hmm, I appreciate the thought behind having the weird Gene scenes in this movie, of it being like a nod to his past and him having to deal with his past. But I also agree, Elisa, that I don't know that it's my favorite
Hmm.
choice,
Well,
especially
it's
that it
like,
keeps happening.
well, it's either that or like, I mean, 'cause I felt like it got run its course when it's all about like, how did I get this way? Where do I come from? Who am I?
Hmm.
There's so much of that, but I think this, shows more on the side of Logan of like more than that can stay with him, right? Like
Yeah.
he's just like the troubled person. Like he just can't catch a break and he's always dealing with things.
I think
I think
it would be fine if like it would switch. Like if it was Gene
uh-huh.
at some points, but maybe it was Silver Fox at other points. Like it just
Sure,
feels like we're
sure.
really focusing on Gene because that was the most recent. But
Yeah.
I think what makes it creepy to me is Ed Logan does have kind of a gene to himself.
mhm.
Hmm.
So I think it's weird that he's having all these conversations in his head with a girl who really didn't give him the time of day when she was alive.
Yeah.
And so I think that's mainly why it bothers me. And also because it's like in some parts it seems like it's kind of like a seductive gene where she's like,
Mhm.
Logan, what are you doing? um
Yeah, it's the like Mystique version of Gene.
into Creepsville a little bit. So and I understand like fans of the franchise would like to see other actors from the previous movies back, all that sort of stuff, and that Gene is an important part of his story. But yeah, it's like literally let the dead people not have to be in this.
Mhm.
Right.
Like, I agree that they should be showing his pain from what happened in X3 and all that, but there has to be a better way than this.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah. Or
During
just
these
not as
moments,
much. I feel like it happens so
yeah,
much.
maybe not as much. But during these moments I did kind of think a lot of like, why didn't we get like solo movies for any of the other X-Men characters. Like
Well,
I
'cause
understand,
he was the
like
most popular.
I understand there's the popularity, but it's like I wonder if there was discussions of like, oh, like Cyclops is going to get his own movie. Like,
Mhm.
could they have expanded on any of the other X-Men?
I mean, we know we were supposed to get what sounded like a really interesting Magneto one
Mhm.
that fell apart.
Yeah, I do remember talks about that. There was always talks, I believe, of like a Gambit specific movie.
Mhm.
I would have watched that.
Which we may or may not get Channing Tatum, Gambit, and Deadpool. So we'll see.
Not Taylor Kitsch Gambit.
Nope, he's gone. He went back to coaching football.
I was about to say, poor Taylor Kitsch. He just can't really catch a break, can he?
Or like Halle Berry, like why didn't we get a Storm?
Yeah, well, because she jumped ship and went and did Catwoman, and then that ruined her.
X-Men.
Was that before X-Men?
Well, maybe it was like in the middle. I don't know. I was about to say that maybe that burned her from wanting to do like a
Yeah.
solo movie.
Superhero movies. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
this was at a weird time too, where superhero movies were Marvel Cinematic Universe was just starting. The previous like 3 superhero movies that we got didn't do well.
Mhm.
So I feel like this movie did pretty good, I think. But it was also on the heels, like if you were going to see the Wolverine movies, you were on the heels of X-Men Origins, which was awful. So
Yeah. So she
I
did Catwoman right after X2.
okay. So then, yeah. So if she did Catwoman after X2 and then X3, which was also a bad movie, that would probably be like, hey, this is a sign that I shouldn't do superhero movies. So
Yeah,
if
well,
anybody came and said, do a
she
solo
took
Storm,
she took that break from 2006 to 2014 to come back for Days of Future Past.
yeah. Yeah, which even that, she's only in the very beginning and the very end of that movie.
Mm,
And then
yeah.
luckily, she stuck around and we got her in John Wick. So,
Yeah.
well, in this movie, Wolverine finally makes it to where he's going, which is like the Yoshida plant, where after fighting through like tons and tons of ninja that are shooting him with poison and stuff, he finally gets captured, and this is the first time we get to see the Silver Samurai, which is like this giant mech made of adamantium, which then can superheat the adamantium on the swords and use them to cut through other adamantium. It feels like we're getting real fast and loose with what can cut adamantium. Um, I don't know if adamantium can cut adamantium, so I would have to look into that. But uh, this is where my second question of how does this all work come into play, because Yoshida's like, the only way that this works is if I can get to your bones, and the only way I can get to your bones is by cutting off your claws and getting to your bones that way. Feel like there's probably other ways to do this.
Yeah.
Especially like if you were going to put Wolverine in a position that like he couldn't fight back. It seems like just cutting off the tips of his claws probably not the best choice. Like if you could, wouldn't you just cut off his arms like completely and then you'd still get the bone? Like they don't explain how this works. And I get that they don't explain it because it feels like they don't know how it works either. They're just like, this is the story that we have given you and we need it to work. So this is how it works.
Yeah.
We, in this fight, which is a pretty cool fight, we get to see, well, unfortunately, Harada realizes his mistakes. He's trying to be a good guy now. He doesn't make it. He dies. Then Viper, she's here. she's still being a creep. She gets knocked down. She gets poisoned, but then you find out that somehow the poison has only affected the top layer of her skin, which then she peels off. And I kept thinking when she pulled her hair off that it was going to be green hair underneath. So it'd be a little more comic accurate to Viper. But it is not. Instead, it just pulls it off like a wig. And you think that like, oh, she's gonna sneak away. Nope, she's still here to fight, and she doesn't make it either. So two characters that they introduced and killed within the same movie. Wolverine finally gets a hold of one of these adamantium swords that's superheated, and he uses it to cut off the Silver Samurai's head, which here's another situation where it doesn't make sense because the eye holes for the head don't line up at all with where the person in the suit is. So because somehow when the head gets cut off, he's not affected at all because he's like a turtle and he's only in the neck of the suit. So it's like, how does this work?
It's
How do you
like, is
see
there
out
a
of the
camera?
suit?
Yeah, it's like there a screen? Is there a camera? Like,
Yeah, some kind of like periscope deal that goes up into the top of the helmet. I don't know. But whatever. Uh Yoshida's in there. Somehow the suit has been keeping him alive this whole time, so he faked his death sort of at the beginning of the movie. And I guess has just been living in the suit. Um, he starts to use magic or however they want to explain this ability to siphon out Wolverine's healing ability, and it starts to revert him back to his younger self, which also doesn't really make sense because Wolverine, his healing ability doesn't revert him to a younger version of himself. It just keeps
yeah,
him at like peak physical
right.
ability. So wouldn't it still be an older version of Yoshida, just
Exactly. You
less
would,
like crippled?
yeah,
Um, and also it's interesting. He gets, he's healed, his hair's growing back, all this stuff, but he still has a scar on his cheek from where
yeah. Wouldn't
the
that go
beginning of
away?
the movie where the metal was split, the atomic bomb like burned his cheek. I had the same thought. I was like, I get that this is supposed to be symbolic, like the
Mhm.
scar that never healed, but it doesn't make sense because the whole point of the healing ability is that it would heal that. Whatever.
Yeah, because like,
Whatever.
yeah, if he was approaching this of like, if I could use Logan's healing ability, but it just maintained me at this older age that I'm at, is it really worth it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like how did he know that it was going to revert him to a
Because I
younger
get his whole
version?
point is like power. Like he's just
Mm.
wanting power. So this tells me like, did he have other mutant abilities that would, he's like, if I have this and then I have all these, it would make me like regain my strength and age backwards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it just it.
I wonder if it was just like so many different ideas and they just like, let's just go with this one.
I feel like yes, that is what happened,
How many
and
people and how many comic nerds were in that room? Like this doesn't make any sense, y'all. Like you can't age
right.
backwards.
But the
Like
studio was like, no, 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 it's fine. Yeah, this is one of
we
those.
still have this $10 million in our budget left. Like we got to figure out the best way to
Yeah,
use it.
like, this is one of those moments that's just like, are you just trying to show off that you guys were de-aging people? I don't know.
Yeah,
Uh,
I know. I got to look at the budget now because like what was 120 million.
yeah. So they had a couple million laying around. They were like,
Yeah.
we could
Oh
make him
yeah.
look young.
Few
Gross
mil.
gross
Few
yeah,
mil.
gross worldwide was 414.8 million. Opening weekend in the US was 53 million.
That
So,
didn't do terrible.
yeah.
Um,
But
well,
yeah, like I do wish we could have gotten a little bit more insight into the technology or whatever versus just like, let me cut off your claws and then, oh, I'm gonna basically wrap my hands around it and then drill into your bones.
mhm.
And that's all I gotta do.
Yep,
It's
that's it.
that easy.
That's how it works. Yep. Could have done that at the beginning of the movie, would have saved us 2
Yeah.
hours. Uh well, in the like most, I guess, ironic way possible, um this guy is in a suit of adamantium, and his daughter Mariko throws one of the pieces of Wolverine's claw that was cut off, and it stabs into Yoshida's head, neck, back. I don't.
It
Stabs into him, yeah. And that's enough to kill him, or at least put him in a position where he like couldn't control the suit anymore. So then it lets go of Wolverine, seemingly reversing the flow of the DNA or something, because now he no longer has the ability to heal, but Wolverine is back to full health. I it seemed like a weird way for them to end the fight, but I guess I kind of understood it from like a storytelling standpoint. But yeah, that's the end of the Silver Samurai. So now Wolverine is going to.
But is it? This is
Well,
one of
yeah.
those like Silver Samurai, like I feel like would be a long-term villain for Wolverine that would just continuously come back, right? So part of me was like expecting there'd be a cool post-credit scene where, especially if he had like obtained all of this adamantium, like they could just build endless Silver Samurai suits.
You would think, but somehow, like, everybody died. Everybody
Yeah.
that could take the mantle died in this movie, except for
Yeah.
Mariko, which I guess could be the Silver Samurai, but doesn't super make sense.
No. Or it's one of those like, is she pregnant? And then
Yeah.
Kind
it's a
of sneak a
son.
Wolverine baby on us.
Yeah.
Who knows what they were planning?
Which if you look into the comic history, I guess there's a arc or storyline where Logan marries Viper.
Ew.
So it's like
have little poisonous babies.
I also wondered why they chose Viper of any mutant they could pick. Like, I wonder like what the different storylines they were going through, or like what other mutants they were wanting to pull in.
It looks like there was a storyline that they were loosely following. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but I think Viper was a part of that, so that's why they had her in there. But the end of this movie, we get to see a couple fun things that sort of set up the next movie-ish. It ends with Wolverine walking through a airport yet again, because he's going to leave Japan. And on the TV, he sees Trask Industries commercial. So, Trask Industries making Sentinels. And then you hear a familiar voice behind him before he goes through the metal detector, which at this point, like, why doesn't he have like pre-check or something? Like, why does he think that he's not going to get pulled to the side when he goes through the metal detector? But surprise,
like how does he make money? How can he afford pre-check?
Surprise, Magneto is behind him in line,
which you see walk right past him.
Yeah.
That's what
and
kills me.
You see behind him in the shot right before he speaks. But so surprise, Magneto's there. He's basically like, I'm not here to fight you. And then, nobody else in the airport is moving. And then you hear another voice. And then you see Charles Xavier wheel up, which makes even less sense because he was literally obliterated the movie before this, which this is supposed to follow. And not only was he obliterated, he sent his mind into a different body. So how is he back in his normal body? Nobody knows. We may never know.
Magic.
The new body just molded into an old man.
Yeah, like, wouldn't a new body have the ability to walk? I don't know. It was a weird choice to bring him back and be like, oh, but he's the same. But it's like, well, that doesn't make sense. You literally made this story after the past story. But here they are, Magneto and Charles, and they're basically asking Wolverine for help. which is supposed to be setting up Days of Future Past, which makes no sense timeline wise because that is set far in the future. So who knows if that's supposed to mean that this movie takes place in the future, which wouldn't make sense because Yoshida was alive in World War II. So lots of weird timeline stuff going on right now. I said how I think this is going to play out into Deadpool, but I guess, you'll have to listen next week when you watch Days of Future Past to figure out how the story continues, maybe.
That, or we can just jump into Logan. I don't know yet.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess we got to figure that out.
Yeah, the timeline is hard because Days of Future Past doesn't make sense with any of the other movies. So,
yeah.
Not even a little bit.
Maybe we just talk about that one after Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah, that's probably. I don't know either. I mean, I guess
I think I'm just more excited for Lisa to watch Logan.
I'm more excited to watch Logan too.
I'm ready to watch Logan again. I haven't seen that one in a minute. And I think I know I saw 2 or 3 times in theater.
Oh, okay. I think I only saw it once in theater, but I have watched it a couple times since. Well,
so all in all, I think the Wolverine definitely a step up from Wolverine Origins.
Yes.
I really loved a lot of the actors. I think the casting was pretty solid. Story messy in parts, and they could have added a lot more detail to explain some things, but all in all, yeah, I like the Wolverine.
Yeah. I would give it 6 claws. I think it was Logan was really good. And I think if I don't count Logan, because again, it feels like Logan is set in a completely different universe than all these other movies. As far as Wolverine goes, the Wolverine is the closest to a comic book Wolverine that we get in all of the live action stuff. So I'm hopeful that we continue this kind of Wolverine in Deadpool.
Oh yeah.
I am on a different computer. So, Elisa, our question from last week.
I left my notes in my room.
Oh no.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I was like, I don't need notes this week because we're doing the Wolverine, and I took notes on that from my computer, and so I don't have my planner with this week's stuff where I wrote down the.
Oh, that's okay. We'll do a double answer next week then. So, I'm still sticking with our mid episode question. I think that should just be our question for this week.
Well, actually, an airport scene.
yeah, I like that. I will add, do you think that we'll see? Oh, I guess we forgot to mention really quick. There is an extended version of this movie that has another bonus scene, which is Wolverine getting on an airplane with Yukio, and Yukio hands him a box, and he opens up the box, and that's where we get the image of the live action adaptation of Wolverine's comic book suit.
Yeah.
So that could be the question. Do you think we'll see that suit in any form in Deadpool 3? Because that's the only time that we'd even have a chance of seeing it. The suit that we see him wearing in all the commercials and stuff is his yellow and blue. This was the yellow and brown.
I mean, it's maybe layered on. Because what I'm curious on is when's the first moment that Deadpool and Wolverine are going to meet in the movie? Is Deadpool told hey, you need to go find Logan? My hunch is Logan's gonna be the key to something, but Logan's gonna want nothing to do with anyone. He just probably wants to be left alone, and Deadpool's got to convince him you got to come with me because we got to go do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Like, you're the key, I need you. But which version are we getting? Like, is it going to be like, is he already going to be in that suit that we see in the post-credit scene? Is he going to be like the scruffed up version living in the woods, or could it be something completely different?
Yeah. I feel like it's going to be scruffed up version. I think my take on this is that it's going to be a more accurate telling of Old Man Logan. Which I have a theory. I need to plug. I was on a podcast that comes out on Friday along with this podcast. Go check out the Zero Credits podcast anywhere that you listen to podcasts. But I was on there and we talked a little bit about Deadpool 3, and I mentioned my great conspiracy theory about what is actually in the movie. And I don't know if we've talked about this, but I think that in the trailer you see the sling ring circle. I don't think that that's in the movie. I think the sling ring circle's not there, and instead it's the two of them jumping towards, drumroll, the Hulk, because I think that this is an Old Man Logan telling, and in that the whole thing is that, you know, the Hulk's killed his family and he's exacting revenge on the Hulk. So I think that's going to be Bruce Banner, old, decrepit, scary Hulk.
Okay. But how is Wesley Snipes' Blade going to come into this which apparently now they're saying he's in it and he's got a bigger role than what you think.
I don't even want to think about it.
Yeah, there's too much right now. There's too much.
Too much for a 2-hour movie that's gonna have no post credits.
Yeah, the whole movie is a post credit scene.
Yeah.
I have been trying my very best to avoid spoilers for Deadpool 3, and it's impossible because everywhere they're posting things about it and like, oh, Wesley Snipes is gonna be in, he's gonna be Blade. I didn't need to know that. I would have been much happier not knowing that going into the movie. It might have been a funny surprise. And now I have no funny surprise. And of course, we're also clinging to things like, is Blake Lively going to be in it? Is Taylor Swift going to be in it? I don't want to know.
Yeah.
Internet, stop sharing your theories. I don't want your theories in my head.
Yeah, the internet is getting it's going to get worse, I feel like, the next few weeks.
Oh, yeah. We still have like a month to go, so plenty of time.
Yeah, it's going to be wild.
Well, thank you all for listening this week. Definitely join us next week when we're going to either be in the future past or in the future. So you'll find out next week where we are in time and space. See you next time.
Bye.